Good afternoon, everybody. It was interesting that the third segment of the chat with Richard Leo that Eric Oakley had. Richard Leo explains about basically the four ways in which people can be proven innocent. One, of course, is to prove that the person is not actually dead at all. And one of the very early cases of a wrongful conviction was of somebody that was found guilty of murdering his pal. And then a few weeks later, the pal turned up safe and well. He had just gone off somewhere, not told anybody. Obviously, the others are if you have a physically impossible to have done the crime because you weren't actually there. Some of you will remember my story about the police trying to do me for speeding when I was actually in a different part of the borders. And so again, I got off with that particular one. And there's been occasions going back into the history of certainly Scottish law. The judge in summing up said that, it's it reminds him of a case in 1700 something where a guy was accused of getting this girl pregnant, but he was able to prove that he couldn't have done it because he was in a different country. Then, of course, there's the physical evidence that excludes somebody, namely DNA, retesting for DNA, and of course. The fourth one is if somebody actually comes forward and you find the real killer. So we're always well aware, aren't we, within the Making a Murderer community, the possibility that Teresa, it was all staged. That there was no murder of Teresa. Certainly that Carmen Bootwell, we know, ended up being deceased, apparently from a methadone overdose, but. There are some people who like that theory more than others. I suppose the thing I like about it is the fact that it would explain so much more than, every time you look at certain suspects, we've looked at Ryan Hilliger's, but there's problems with that. When you look at every suspect in this, it's tricky. My number one suspect, of course, is the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department assassination unit. And we know that one exists because they talk about it quite openly, Sheriff Peterson. It would be easier to kill Steve than it would be to frame him. But anyway, let's have a look at this article. This was shared in a group by Jerome. Thank you, Jerome. And it's an excellent article. So he put it in his French Wrecking Crew Facebook page. And hopefully that has come up all right for you. And Jerome thought the band would like this. Thought the band, okay. So this was posted 9 days ago. Who was it posted by? Does it say? Not only did lead in, Temptedious, again, Temptedious, of course, yeah. Not only did lead investigator Wiegert confirm a bloodied blunt instrument was found in the back of Teresa's vehicle, we also have confirmation from Assistant Attorney General Fallon that, quote, possible human bones were found at the Cuss Road clandestine burial site, a blunted instrument and suspected human remains. A new piece of information was recently released due to the tenacity of Stephen Avery and Brendan Dass's supporters, who made a fruitful FOIA request, that's Freedom of Information Act, we normally just call it a FOIA request, and discovered a November 7th, 2005 affidavit written by lead investigator Wiegert, mentioning a bloody blunt instrument in the back of Teresa's Rav4. This was seen as a bombshell discovery, considering one, none of us ever knew a blunted instrument and potential murder weapon was recovered from Teresa's vehicle. Two, there is no mention of this potential murder weapon being tested at the state crime lab. And three, this new information is consistent with how Zellner's blood spatter expert said Teresa was attacked. In addition to mentioning a blooded blunt instrument in the back of the Rav, Wiegert's affidavit also detailed why he why he suspected he would find Teresa's body, clothing and personal items buried at the clandestine burial site discovered at the Cuss Road cul-de-sac. Cadaver dogs and bloodhounds showed interest in the site, the scent of death Teresa's scent, and they discovered white plastic protruding from the disturbed earth with pieces of blue tarp found nearby. However, despite Wiegert's stated belief, we are told nothing pertinent was found at the burial site. We are told this by multiple people. John Ertl notes a potential burial site was photographed and examined. Nothing was recovered from the site. Case of report, Diedring reports, John Diedring, the burial site was processed by the state crime lab personnel. No mention is made of Colburn and Link spending hours at the burial site with Bushman, Lieutenant Mike Bushman of Manitrock Sheriff's Department, prior to Ertl being called to the scene. Diedring notes he was told the area was not pertinent to this case. 3, Colburn testified he and Lenk were asked to go to that area and excavate that area if the crime lad requested it. Colburn reveals it turned out to be nothing. Again, Colburn doesn't mention spending hours at the burial site before the crime lad arrived, and indeed seems to suggest he only to help with the excavation because the crime lad requested it. That's BS. We know Ertl did not request Colburn and Lenk's assistance. They were already there. Due to the release of Wiegert's November 7th affidavit mentioning the burial site, I decided to review everything I could from the reports, motions, and transcripts that mentioned the burial site. And voila, there it is. I discovered a motion written by the highest ranking official to work this case that contradicts everything listed above. According to Assistant Attorney General Tom Fallon, something was found at the suspected burial site, and it was a something significant, something I've never seen discussed before. Fallon confirms suspected human bones were found at the clandestine burial site on November the 7th, 2005, one day before suspected human bones were found in Steve's back garden. Craterface has had quite the time in this case, keeping his story straight about the bone evidence, where they were found, how critical they are to the case, and whether or not they were still in custody and available for testing. We can add yet another discrepancy to Fallon's statements about the bones, this time from a motion written and signed by the man himself, in which he argued the state's multiple searches of Stephen's trailer and surrounding area wasn't suspicious because officers kept getting interrupted and called away from the Avery salvage yard to collect evidence elsewhere. In my opinion, Tom Fallon's list of times police were called away reads like a compendium of potential exculpatory evidence found in this case. Women's jeans at Maribel Caves, where Earl previously attempted a rape, the burner cell phone found by Scott's trailer and Bobby's hunting spot, and a new piece of information, suspected human bones found at the suspected burial site. Motion to suppress, state response by Assistant Attorney General Fallon. It is unreasonable to expect law enforcement officers complete their search within 1 or 2 days, given the fact that resources were strained and that every time something was discovered off-site, personnel were assigned to investigate. For example, Special Agent Fassbender described finding a clandestine burial site located away from the ASY. And additionally, a discovery at Maribel Caves Park of women's pants and lotion caused the reallocation of resources to that location. Additionally, a cell phone was found in the ditch, as well as some possible human bones elsewhere. These were in addition to the ones found at the clandestine burial site. As a result, evidence technicians were utilized and taken away from the parcel. So, according to Fallon, there were possible human bones found at the clandestine burial site on November 7, 2005, as well as more possible human bones elsewhere, probably the quarry. But wait, I thought that honest cop Colburn said the burial site was turning out to be nothing. Possible human bones aren't nothing. Why would lead investigator Wiegert say that there was a blooded, blunted instrument found in the back of the RAV on November 6 if it wasn't true? Similarly, why would Assistant Attorney General Fallon say there were possible human bones found at the clandestine burial site on November 7th if it wasn't true? How many times are we going to come across mentions of potentially exculpatory evidence in this case that are dismissed as typos and errors? Newly released affidavits from Wiegert suspected to find Teresa's body at the Cuss Road burial site. During Stephen's trial, good family man Andy Colburn said the burial site at Cuss Road turned out to be nothing. Assistant Attorney General, don't ask me about the bones. Fallon is on record confirming that possible human bones were found on the Cuss Road suspected or clandestine burial site. Edit. To respond to misrepresentations being pushed by the guilters about this statement from Fallon. Per the included screenshot, Fassbender mentioned the clandestine burial site during a pre-trial hearing on motion to suppress. However, per the included screenshot, when Fallon mentions possible human bones being found at the clandestine burial site, he does not reference a page from that pre-trial hearing. Users over at MAM are suggesting he did. He did not. This misunderstanding has resulted in users claiming Fallon was mistaken about bones being found at the burial site. How did they come to this conclusion? Based on testimony that was not even cited by Fallon or Fassbender, claiming nothing was found at the burial site. So what? Ertl, Deeden and Colburn all said the same thing, as I mentioned in the post. If guilters had read the post in full and the motion itself, they would see that Fallon makes many statements of fact that do not rely on testimony from the pre-trial motion hearing. Example, Fallon says, with the discovery of human bones on Tuesday afternoon in the burn pit, it became apparent that Teresa Holbach was probably dead, her body dismembered, and her remains were actually on the Avery property. There are many issues with this statement, but notice there is no reference to the pre-trial hearing. So the conclusion is not Fallon was mistaken about the location of the bones based on testimony he never cited. The conclusion, as I said at the end of the post, is to simply question why Fallon would state as fact that bones were found at the burial site if everything else and their mother said it wasn't true. How incompetent are they? That's a big mistake. If it's a mistake, it is a mistake. Is it a mistake? Fallon says bones were found at the Cuss Road burial site and that newly released affidavit reveals Wiegert expected to find Teresa's remains at the Cuss Road burial site. Zellner too has alleged that Teresa's remains were likely found at the burial site. Given the fact we know Fallon has no problem changing his story and lying about where bones were found, any statements by Fallon about bone evidence at the burial site shouldn't be dismissed as a mistake, but investigated as a potential truth that Fallon tried to cover up. Okie dokie. So many thanks for sharing that one, Joe. And again, it's you know, the Sheriff's Department didn't think for one moment, DCI, etc., didn't think for one moment they would ever have all of their investigation being questioned, being looked at, and being poured over and being dissected, you know, 15 years later. They didn't suspect that for one little bit. When they handed over the bones to the Holbachs, they thought that was it, end of story, we can now all relax. I don't think so. Do you? We'll catch you soon. Bye for now.